Hello, friends. As you probably realized, we took a little bit of a hiatus over the last 3 months, and now, starting in July, the audio project with Deena Tearney is back. I want to say that I truly appreciate you, our listeners, and I'm looking forward to continuing our podcast conversations. Are we good to go?
Good to go.
All right, great. We are back with the audio project, and today I have Mark Dow, who is a strategic customer advisor at MuleSoft, as my guest. So thank you for being here, Mark. I appreciate you taking time.
Thanks, Deena. It's great being here.
Yeah, so let's start off with a little bit of an introduction of what your role is at MuleSoft, and then I want to hear more about MuleSoft too. But
sure, absolutely. So I've been with MuleSoft for closing in on 5 years now. Late 15, early 16, I joined the team. And maybe it makes sense to kind of go back to what I was doing before. I was the chief product officer for MuleSoft since then, running product management, engineering, operations, doc, UX, everything that was kind of related to putting out the product. And did that, came into just a rocket ship ride of a company through 16. We IPO'd in 2017. We were acquired by Salesforce in 2018.
Quite a journey.
So every year it's been this amazing journey. This year, at the beginning of this year, I should transition into a new role.
Nice.
It's a non-operational role. It's my first non-operational role in of my career. So it's been interesting. 20 years, and I'm not worried about the pager duty for, it's just something that might go down at night.
Nice.
So I get a chance to really work with our most strategic customers, our partners, analysts and press, and really just help people understand what the integration marketplace looks like, how can MuleSoft help, what our vision is, and how we can really just partner with them most effectively. So I transitioned to that role in January.
How's that going?
Moved out here. My family's been out here since last summer. Okay. We, for family reasons, we really wanted to come out here. My wife was born and raised here. Nice. 4 generations out here. So came out, and I was really going to be targeted and focused on our customers in what we call JPAC. So Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia. What's interesting is with everything that's been going on, all of our conversations have gone virtual. We've been remote across the world. Yep. And so I've actually maintained all of my customer relationships with our European customers in North America, and I've added on our customers in the JPAC region. So it's been really interesting for me.
Wow.
It's enabled me to sort of spread very broadly across lots of time zones.
Yeah. So super busy then. So it expanded really.
Yeah, it did. I mean, It's been really good. It's been really, really good in terms of just being able to connect across so many different industries and regions.
Yeah. Very cool. I was curious, just for my own edification, is your background an engineer? Are you super technical? But
my undergrad is double E. I got a master's in computer science. I was an engineer for the first part of my career. Went into management, managed bigger and bigger teams, ran all of product engineering at Ariba prior to moving to MuleSoft. So MuleSoft was interesting. I was at a bunch of startups really early on in my career, sort of right around the dot-com bubble.
Yep.
That was interesting. And then I went I joined Ariba and had a really long run with Ariba until we were acquired by SAP. And MuleSoft was going from big back to quite small. I think we were about 500 people when I joined MuleSoft across the entire company. And my engineering team was, I think, something like 800 to 900 when I left Ariba. So it was a big change. And it was fun. It was just a lot of fun.
That's cool. That's awesome. So Pacific Point, we are a MuleSoft partner, relatively recent. In the last year, we became a MuleSoft partner. And I always find it to be one of those really difficult products to explain, especially when there's a business audience. It's funny because I have, we did actually an innovation we went to the Innovation Center at Salesforce. We brought some clients over, and we've had multiple things where there's kind of that mixed crowd where there's some IT people, and you see them getting all excited when they see the MuleSoft stuff come up, and the business is just like, what?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, you're talking to a lot of strategic accounts. How do you explain MuleSoft? What is MuleSoft?
That's a great question. That's a great question. This is basically what I've been doing since I joined MuleSoft, is trying to take a fairly complex topic and help really apply the business lens to it, and really the outcome lens. And I think that's where MuleSoft is different as a company, because we really focus not just on the technology, but on the actual business outcomes that we can enable. Yeah. So if you think about, one of the easy comparisons is if you think about what computer networking was like before the standardization on TCP/IP and Ethernet. Maybe this is dating me, but but I go back to the days when there was client-server systems, and we had to plug everything in ourselves, and the set of systems that worked were the set of systems that came from a manufacturer with that server and with those client desktops, and that was it. Nothing else talked to anything else. Yep. And when you look at where we are today, everything we're doing right now is all wireless. We walk in wherever we are, we expect to have signal, we expect to have connectivity no matter where we are, and it's all because there was this standard way of kind of connecting things. And so the question then becomes, in the context of systems, how can we actually help companies get there? Mm-hmm. And even before we get to sort of that solutioning, if you take a look at the space of the problem space that we're in, it just continues to grow unabated. The average enterprise has over 800 software packages, software applications, SaaS solutions, et cetera, in place. Of those 800, typically less than a third are integrated. Integrated meaning they can talk to one another, you know where your data is, you know where your business process, you know how things are connected. Less than a third. So when we take a look at that as compared to sort of what we expect in our consumer experience, we expect connected customer experiences. We expect every company that we deal with to know who we are, know what we've done, know what we've purchased in the past. Like when I call in, I don't want to have to repeat everything that I've done up to that point to kind of get the next step of help, right? Yep. You should know. You have all my data. You have it all, right? Yep. And so if you look at that, and you look at, every industry, it's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We talk about the customer. In every industry, in healthcare, you've got, you've got the patient as a customer. You also have the doctor as a customer. You have the clinician as a customer. You might have, in pharmaceuticals, you have your contract research organizations as your customer. They're the people you're dealing with on the other side. And so across all these different domains, there's always that connected experience that people are expecting. So the question becomes, if everybody's expecting it, why don't we have it? Why isn't it here already? And that's the problem that we really like to solve.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to explain it. It's funny because sometimes I've talked to, this was some government stuff that I did a few years ago, and I was talking to legislators. So put that in context, right? They're not very technical. They're business oriented, I guess you could say. And I was talking about how data was from here and now it's over here. And they're like, it wasn't already there to begin with. It's just mind blowing. It's no, they're all over the place. And to bring that all together is quite a feat. And it's an expectation. You said, it's sort of an expectation that people think it should be there.
Absolutely. I think on the business side, right, it becomes, okay, what are your business outcomes? Agility, how can you get new business running, how can you get a new project up and running, how can you connect with your partners better, and so on. The problem is always what we call the IT delivery gap. Right? So there's more and more tech out there, more and more capabilities. On average though, their IT budgets are typically not increasing, or if they are, by very small amounts. If there's been an acquisition or something of that sort in the past, typically IT budgets are being decreased as they're being asked to optimize. At the same time, IT teams are looking at, I think our connectivity report this year showed that IT teams have over a 40% increase year over year on the number of projects they're being asked to deliver. Right?
That's amazing.
So there's this huge gap in what they can do and what they're being asked to do.
Next thing you know, they've got just all sorts of point-to-point solutions with integration. They've got a mix of different data lakes, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff happening. And when I talk to them about MuleSoft or an API strategy, it's just like overwhelming to think about paying back that technical debt and how to approach that in pieces. So that's one scenario I'd love to get your thoughts on as a client advisor and a customer advisor for these strategic accounts. Like maybe what would be some good approaches that somebody like that might fit into. My other scenario that comes up a lot with our customers is they're like, oh, well, I only need a couple point-to-point. I'm just going to start there. And it's like, okay, well, that's cool, but just remember, you don't want to end up over here, right? And then the years pass, and then the next thing you know. So how do you talk to that customer? So these are the conversations that I have, and I'd love to hear from the expert and tell me like how we can help solve these problems together. But I see those two scenarios, and it's always that, the IT guy's like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to create that spaghetti mess. Right. But then convincing the business that it's an important investment at the time. Right. And so, anyways, those are the two scenarios I'd love to get your thoughts on.
It's really funny. You mentioned spaghetti. You mentioned point to point.
Yep.
I think the spaghetti and the point to point, like that is what has happened, right? Like as there are more and more technology and more capability that you can enable for your enterprise, everybody wants some SaaS. Everybody wants part of the cloud. Everybody wants, to optimize and automate their business processes. And what happens is every single project team over time has done the best they can. Of no fault of their own, for sure. They are just trying to get their project done, and they write some custom code and connect directly to that other system they need. And that happens again and again and again. And you end up with the spaghetti. You end up with this ball of yarn that you cannot take apart, right? Actually, our founder Ross Mason talks about the ball of mud, right? And it's opaque. You can't tell what's in there. You can't take it apart. So the really interesting thing is, if you think about all these different systems, it's not about the connectivity that's the issue. The issue is that most of it's done in custom code, which is opaque. Opaque meaning you have to get a developer who understands the code to tell you how to make the change. And typically the developer that developed it in the first place is not there when you want to go make the change later. We have customers who, we had one customer who had a project changing a single column name of a database table. Sounds like a really trivial project. Go change the column name. We want to make it easier to read and understand. It cost them, I think the number was, it cost them $5 million. $5 million to change the name of one database column. Why? Because as we went down the project, they had to do all the testing across all the systems that connected directly to that database. They thought they had it all set up. It was all good. And as they went through all their testing, this was weeks and weeks of testing, et cetera, to make that change. When they finally rolled out to production, they found that there was a system in production that they didn't account for in their testing that brought down part of their business. That cost them a big chunk of that $5 million. They had to roll it all back, and they had to start over again. So that's the cost. The cost becomes basically understanding what is out there, how things are connected, not having that understanding. You start getting more and more rigid systems. The estimation for every project goes higher and higher and higher. And that's what we're really trying to take apart. So when you think about how to then approach that problem, how do you actually overcome that, right? So we really look at is this concept of the composable enterprise. That's sort of this key mindset shift of going to a place where you say, look, I am still going to run these projects, but what I'm really going to look to do is to productize the assets that come out of each project, a project at a time, but each project is going to let me develop APIs as well as integrations that are productized. Productized meaning they are the Lego blocks that help you create that composable enterprise. Composable meaning that, when we take a look at technology today, for the most part, people do not write code from the ground up for everything that they need. You think about your mobile applications, most mobile apps hit they hit social media APIs, you hit mapping APIs, you hit communication APIs, you hit shipping APIs. So all those capabilities are out there for the mobile app developer to leverage and take advantage of. So the question becomes, why can't you make your enterprise actually look that way with all of your enterprise systems? So that's what we think about with that composable enterprise, is actually taking all your enterprise systems, breaking them down into these units, these Lego blocks, that then you can start to leverage over and over again. It makes it actually easier and easier to understand your projects.
Yeah.
So going to your question of these two scenarios, the one of, okay, we've got all this stuff out there. We know we have a problem.
Yeah.
We know that we're spending all of our time doing management and maintenance, et cetera. Where do we even start, right? And I think that, one, it's great that they're asking the question. The second thing that we always say is, well, what are your key business objectives? What are the key projects that the business needs? Because you can start a project at a time. The key is that with API-led connectivity, with using APIs and integrations in this way, you really can start a project at a time. You don't have to go big bang and try to deconstruct your entire legacy infrastructure, your mainframes, et cetera. You can really start a project at a time. What happens is, as you build out each project, you start getting a catalog of your assets and your capabilities that you can then start building this this feedback loop of production and consumption of assets and capabilities.
Yeah.
So that's for the big enterprise. For the smaller team that says, well, look, I just have this one thing I have to do. Yeah. That's fine too. Just do that one thing with API-led in mind. It doesn't take that much more. Just think about the project as not being something that is time and material based, but rather outcome based. Right? Think about what you're going to do to actually enable leverage in the future. Again, the productization mindset. Where productization meaning everything has a strategy, has a roadmap, and has a set of customers or users that may leverage it. Yeah. Right? You may only have one user who's going to use that API or that integration when you first create it. That's fine too. Know who that user is and be intentional about that.
Yeah. So what would be a good example? Like I know maybe we could break apart one. I think right now we have, as an example, or maybe you have a better one, but I'll just throw out mine. Financial services. Client has Salesforce. A lot of their core business as it relates to loan processing and things of that nature is happening in there. Sales, processing is happening in there. But through that loan process, they need to connect to the core banking applications, which is it's happening all the time. Yep. And people change out their core banking system sometimes. So how do, when you think about that, and if you build an integration and you productize those pieces that come down into core banking, maybe you could break apart how you would approach that, or how you would productize those bits. Yeah. Would it be a loan? Would it be what would be your kind of example, just so we can maybe make it a little bit more practical?
So when we think about it, there are different types of APIs out there. And I'm using the word API and the word integration sort of interchangeably here. When we talk about integration, it's really when connectivity to systems, being able to transform data. So one system might call a customer object a customer or record. Yep. Another system may call it a CUST. Another might have CUST ID, something like that, right? Yeah. So there's all these different ways of labeling that. And so the question becomes, how do you transform data to actually make it map up and help those different systems actually talk to one another? The thing is, though, integration can also be business process execution. So loan origination. I mean, there's a whole set of steps that are involved in loan origination. There are different systems you have to go to. There's credit checks, there's loan checks, there's all the different things you have to do. And that is what we call orchestration. It's basically orchestrating the different set of request responses that you need from these different systems to say that you can actually execute on this loan. Now, when we think about the financial space, there are the core systems, what we call system APIs. These are the core business objects, the core assets that you want to publish. Typically, it's central IT that's doing this. You want to make sure that there's all the security and governance and scalability that you need for those back-end systems. You want to make sure, again, these core banking systems don't get overloaded and so on. And so those are the sort of layer of system APIs. At the next layer up, we have what we call process APIs. This is where you start calling different systems, you start orchestrating between them and so on. And then at the very top, we have what we call our experience APIs. These are the final set of APIs you might build to integrate with an external system, a mobile application or a web application or so on. Now, if you think about it, you're building the mobile app, you need access to, in this case, loan origination. You also need access to the customer record. You also need access then to creating the customer record and initiating that entire process. So those all become APIs that can be created for this, let's say it's a website project.
Yep.
The interesting thing is, if you build it with all of these endpoints available and visible, understood in the catalog, when you go to build your mobile app, you no longer have to build all of those capabilities over again. You can simply leverage what was created by the previous project.
Exactly.
Right? And you can start to extend from there. So that's what we think about when we think about really sort of expanding on the set of capabilities. Now what's interesting is, when you build in this way, you start to get actually visibility into, well, where does my customer record actually reside? You know, one of the things that we're working on at Salesforce is the concept of the single source of truth. You know, a lot of the enterprise customers we talk to say that they actually have a hard time understanding which systems have their customer record. How do they actually understand how to create that single source of truth across all those systems? Right, and I think that there was a thought of, okay, we'll put everything into one system, you know, and every time you try to do that, it was a re-architecture. It was convert everything that you had out there to another system and then move all the data in there. You know, you're saying
that
before.
Was master data, is that a thing of the past?
Yeah, master data management was this idea of like suck everything into one place and try to manage it in that one place, right? And the problem is, every time you did that, another system would pop up, and so what we're doing at Salesforce is this concept of the single source of truth is really a federated mechanism to help identify where all the data is, link it through a common link, but then leave the data where it is, so you don't have to move it, right? And I think that's where a lot of these capabilities kind of change now. Is we think about creating a composable enterprise, again, a project at a time, but then over time getting more and a greater catalog of the capabilities that your business has, and more visibility into where all that data is sitting.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Cool. You mentioned central IT. I'm just curious, from some of the clients that you've had in the past, how transitioning from whatever enterprise integration framework may have been in place over to something like MuleSoft, how's that been for IT people to have that mind shift and kind of think of things in this way? How do you see them adopting to MuleSoft? Has it been a natural transition, or?
So it's interesting. I think that there's always a need from our side to make sure that our developer experience is the best that's out there. We typically see a 60% increase in developer productivity as they start to use and leverage our product. That's really important for us. I think that nobody wants to be out there writing glue code. There's no reason to write that glue code. You could be spending your time, your coding capabilities, writing something that's actually important to be writing in code and leveraging code in an effective way. Then I think for the IT decision makers, it really becomes about understanding how much change management is actually needed in all this. So for MuleSoft, again, going back to the IT conversation, the business conversation, it's something that we've been focused on, since our inception, because we really think about how can we help business and IT actually collaborate effectively on these kinds of projects. When we think about change management, our platform is both a technology platform, the actually running of the APIs and the management, the design, et cetera. It's also a business process platform. So we have what we call our Center for Enablement and our Catalysts. And these are programs that we have that we will bring. We've basically productized and packaged all the learnings from running these programs with thousands of customers, so that we can help our customers understand how to actually get started. Right? And so you asked before, where do you get started? It becomes, where you get started is a question for IT, but it's also very much a question for the business. What are the key business initiatives that you have coming out this year? And how do we help bring the business team and the IT team into the room and help them actually talk to one another effectively on what projects are most important to the business, which ones are maybe the easiest to implement or execute on for IT. And that may actually change the prioritization a little bit on the business side, right? If you find out that your number one business priority is actually going to take 100% of your IT capacity, well, maybe you'll trade, for the next 3 for 20% of the capacity, right? And so it's that conversation that needs to really happen.
Okay.
And then the focus on, then those business outcomes as IT starts to go in and implement and execute on these projects.
Yeah.
And so change management, really big topic.
Yeah.
The mindset shift, we see more and more that mindset shift happening now at the C level, coming from the C-suite, which I think is
awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Understanding APIs and their importance, and then saying we want to have an enterprise-wide API standard and initiative, I think is amazing.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is, even though APIs are well understood, the need to use them and leverage them is understood. We found that 80% of organizations out there want to leverage and use APIs. Only about 15% have currently a top-down, enterprise-wide mandated methodology.
Interesting.
Right? And so a lot of it is, and it's still working, but I think that over time you really need to look at what does it look like enterprise-wide.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is bottoms up, project team at a time.
Yep.
Another, sort of lines of business.
Yep.
You may have some where there's governance in place, but it's not fully implemented across the enterprise. Right? Again, depending on size.
Yeah.
So
I think those are good strategies and good points to bring up, because I feel like a lot of people sort of feel like it sounds super overwhelming. And so when you can either approach it from a project or, figure out the right way, it doesn't have to be that, but it's starting on creating that framework is like super important for the continued growth and scale, and new technologies are going to come on. You're going to change out your core. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. So thinking about it now and starting to invest in that makes a lot of sense. I'm just curious, now with the current climate of what's happening in the world and the customers that you're talking to across the regions that you cover, which is quite expansive, what are you seeing? Is the conversation changed at all, or is it sort of the same topics? I would guess thematically it's the same, but I'm just curious, like what sort of has been that from your end?
Very wide range of that. I think that one, I would say that the pandemic has really impacted everybody around the world in just really unforeseen ways, right? And I think that as a part of Salesforce, one of the things we really look at is this model of how can we help our customers most effectively go through the 3 phases of stabilizing, reopening, and then growing. And so really thinking about it effectively in that way. Nice. And knowing and meeting our customers where they are, right? Yep. I think on the stabilized side, the conversations have shifted in terms of really, I think, an expanded sort of understanding and focus on mental health for all of our for all of our employees and everybody who's on our team. How do we help them really kind of get through this time, right? It's a lot of change, a lot of things going on, and how do you keep mentally healthy during this time, right? And so there's been a lot of that at Salesforce, which has been great. Mark Benioff and the executive team have been running, actually, if you can believe this, weekly all hands. We have over 50,000 employees, and I think they were saying that over 50% typically attend the weekly all hands. And it's just been an amazing touch point with leadership of what's going on. Hey, there's a lot of unknowns out there. How, what are we doing? How are we exploring this? How are we going to think about it? And so on. And so that part has changed, right? Now, when you think about a lot of the other aspects, I think that is changing, but it's really changing in that it's accelerating. If you look at the trends that we are dealing with in technology and in how business is run, how business is handled, these were all trends that were there before COVID. How you, again, create the connected customer experience. How do you collaborate digitally? What does it mean to run a digital transformation in your organization? How do you do things more remotely? How can you leverage skill sets and capabilities in a global way? These were all trends that were out there. They're just dramatically accelerating now. So I've talked to customers who have said that actually in the context of the pandemic, their ability to spend more time with their family has gone up dramatically because they're no longer having to do 3-hour a day commute, right? And so then the question becomes, okay, when things start opening up again, how many people are going to work remotely, or which percentage of the day, or will there be a percent that will be remote, right? And I don't think everybody's going to, it's not like overnight suddenly everybody's going to be working remotely.
Right.
But even if it's 10%, 15%, 20%, that's enough of a shift to fundamentally shift how we structure our offices, how we hire, how we grow, how we train, all the aspects of HR change, right? Just with 15, 20%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so those are the kinds of accelerations, I guess, of digital transformation that I'm really seeing. A lot of the conversations, when you get down to the sort of nuts and bolts, stay exactly the same. How can we get these projects done? How can we do them faster? Where do we start? How do we do them most effectively? Right? And I think that I think it's been a real wake up call in some cases of not being far enough along on that digital transformation journey.
I agree. I would say that it's been similar. Our conversations have been similar. Most of our clients are Salesforce. I have a little bit of MuleSoft, but it's a growing area for us. But I would agree, like, there's a lot of people that were talking about the transformation and planning it out and deciding this and thinking about integrations. And I don't want to change chairs, so now how do I build all this stuff? And now it's absolutely been like, man, I should have done this 6 months ago. I didn't, and we better start now. And so things are accelerated. They're moving quicker, and people are looking for those results. Okay, cool. Well, I have a question of the day to kind of wrap us for the moment. A little introspective maybe, and we were already kind of going there, but with all that's happening in the world, what's sort of a key message or theme that you would want to share with our audience today?
That's a great question. Okay, I think there's
and you can have 4 or 5.
Yeah. Okay. 2, maybe 3. Okay. So, one, I think that we're in a place now where there's a place for optimism in terms of what can be done, what technology can bring, how much it can change, how much we can change society with it. Creating that connected experience can be amazing. And so that's kind of one thought. The second thought is, in this context of the pandemic, we have this amazing chance. Our kids, all of us, have this amazing chance to learn and grow because of everything that's being enabled remotely. I mean, there are courses that are being put online that were never there before. And so I think that this is an amazing chance to expand and learn a new skill, a new capability. And I would say for that one, whatever you're thinking about doing, go do it. I think that I had a team who, a fairly senior leader in the team, that said to me, well, we can work with our customers and they can really get going on that journey. Once travel starts again, we'll really get going on that. And this was, to be fair, this was in late March. Right. Where I really didn't know what was going to be happening. Right. But over the course of the last, it's only been 8 weeks since then. Over the course of the last 8 weeks, it's really become, hey, no, go do it now. Yep. Like, whatever you want, like new business process, new business approach, new capabilities, whatever you want to do, go do it, because this is the new normal. Right? There's no waiting. There's no waiting for things to go back to the way they were. Right? So I think that's kind of bucket number 2. And then the final bucket I would say is back to that customer I talked about his family. I think that we have this amazing opportunity right now to spend a lot more time with our family, and especially with things being a lot more things being remote and digital and not having to travel so much. I know for the two of us, we were in in lines of business where we had to travel a lot before. But we've got all this time that we don't have to spend traveling, and it's a great, there's great ways to invest that in your relationships and your family and people around you. So those are my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that wraps up today's podcast. Thank you, Mark, for joining, and I'm super glad that you're in Hawaii and looking forward to maintaining our connection here. So
Thanks, Deena. Thank you so much, and really, thank you for being a MuleSoft partner and a Salesforce partner. Looking forward to what's coming up for us.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.